The bare minimum kind of protections you would want for migrant workers would be to be able to advocate for themselves without being threatened with deportation. Steve Marshall disagrees with that.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
So folks know that there are a lot of immigrant workers in the United States, and contrary to popular belief, a lot of them, most of them are not undocumented. Most of them actually have documentation. One of the methods of documentation for immigrant workers is the H-2A visa program. The H-2A visa program allows employers to sponsor migrant workers to come to the United States for seasonal work and perform jobs that ostensibly simply cannot be done because there are not enough workers. There are not enough American workers. Like the whole premise of the H-2A visa program is that there are simply not enough bodies in the United States to do this work, and so we have to go and get migrants to come and do this work instead. It is not supposed to be an opportunity for these employers to undercut American wages and working conditions. It is not supposed to be a bargaining mechanism for employers to make the labor market worse for American workers. It is supposed to be just that there's literally not the bodies here, and we have to have more people. That's what it's supposed to be. But obviously, this system is ripe for abuse because, unlike other mechanisms of immigration, the H-2A visa program is completely dependent on the employer. If the employer decides they no longer want to sponsor this worker, then the worker gets sent back. It's not a work visa where they can change their employer, and it's not a green card where they don't have to have a job necessarily. It is, you are tied directly to a single employer. So obviously there is a lot of room for abuse in that. And the Congress has given the executive branch the ability to regulate this H-2A visa program. And that is what the Biden administration did over the summer in response to an onslaught of abuse of this program. And I want to read some of these cases from you. This one comes out of Georgia. It is a human trafficking scheme that is estimated to have spanned at least 3 years, taking place within the southern, middle, and northern districts of Georgia. This is coming from a press release from the Department of Justice. The Middle District of Florida, the Southern District of Texas, and Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and elsewhere. The conspirators required The conspirators required the workers to pay unlawful fees for transportation, food, and housing while illegally withholding their travel and identification documents, and subjected workers to perform physically demanding work for little or no pay, housing them in crowded, unsanitary, and degrading living conditions, and threatening them with deportation and violence. Exploitation of the workers included being required to dig onions with their bare hands, no tools, paid 20 cents for each bucket harvested, and threatened with guns and violence to keep them in line. The workers were held in cramped, unsanitary quarters and fenced work camps with little or no food, limited plumbing, and without safe water. The conspirators are accused of raping, kidnapping, and threatening or attempting to kill some of the workers or their families, and in many cases sold or traded the workers to other conspirators. At least 2 of the workers died as a result of workplace conditions. In the Southern District of Georgia, these activities were alleged to have taken place in the counties of Atkinson, Bacon, Coffee, Tattnall, Toombs, and Ware, as farmers paid the conspirators to provide contract laborers. The conspirators are alleged to have reaped more than $200 million from the illegal scheme, laundering the funds through cash purchases of land, homes, vehicles, and businesses, through cash purchases of cashier's checks, and by funneling millions of dollars through a casino. Then, As the continuing investigation into the conspiracy moved into late 2019, the indictment alleges that 3 of the conspirators attempted to intimidate and persuade a witness to lie to a federal grand jury and deny any knowledge of the illegal activities of the Patricio organization. That's only one of these schemes. Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate. The United Farm Workers Union has like half a dozen of these in a list about this proposed rule that came out in the summer. So here's a quicker synopsis of some of those. In Washington, male workers on H-2A visas were illegally used to displace a predominantly female local workforce, resulting in a gender discrimination lawsuit by the Washington Attorney General's office. In Utah, the former president of the Utah Farm Bureau is now subject to a human trafficking investigation after physically assaulting H-2A workers on his farm. In New York, where H-2A workers from Mexico and Jamaica have been threatened with losing their work visas by employers amidst ongoing UFW unionization campaigns, growers are attempting to exclude H-2A workers from unionization rights. In Idaho, where recent reporting uncovered systemic abuse of sheep herders working under H-2A visas, as well as the complicity of the state labor department officials in looking the other way. In California, where H-2A workers from Mexico had their visas recalled after speaking out about unsafe working conditions in what was ultimately found to be an illegal labor practice. In Florida, where an H-2A worker was the first farm worker in 2023 to be killed on the job by extreme heat while on his very first day on the job, resulting in an OSHA citation of the employer. Rife with abuse by employers, by bosses, by farm owners, and large landholders. That is the H-2A visa program. So the Biden administration this summer released new rules, which he is allowed to do, which Congress has given the executive branch the authority to do. These new rules gave workers, farm workers, migrant farm workers, further protections against retaliation from farmers, from farm owners. It said, it didn't even say they have a right to unionize. It said if migrant farm workers organize, if they choose, as is their First Amendment right, to associate with a labor organization, farm owners cannot retaliate against them. They cannot threaten them with deportation because of their association with a labor union or because of their activities to make the workplace better. That seems like the most basic kind of protection that you would want in a program like this, especially if you are an America First type who the whole reason you care about the immigration issue is ostensibly because you want to protect American workers from being undercut by migrant wages. It seems like the bare minimum kind of protections you would want for migrant workers would be to be able to advocate for themselves without being threatened with deportation. Like the bare minimum. Well, you would be wrong because Steve Marshall disagrees with that. Steve Marshall is Alabama's attorney general. When this rule came out, he joined other Republican attorneys general, in opposing the rule, and last week they were successful. They were successful. In September, Attorney General Marshall was joined by attorneys general from Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia to support farmers and oppose the U.S. Department of Labor's rule imposing unlawful, quote-unquote, unlawful labor burdens on farmers participating in the temporary agriculture worker program known as the H-2A visa program. And the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Kentucky decided against the Biden administration in favor of these Republican attorneys general who opposed this rule. And so now we are back in a situation where it is totally lawful for employers to retaliate against migrant workers who are trying to organize for better wages and working conditions. Under what condition does that help Alabama workers? Under what conditions, how does that help Alabamians? The only Alabamians that it helps are the owners of large pieces of land, are farm owners, not farm workers, farm owners. And so that's why whenever I hear these complaints about immigration, and whenever I hear it being cloaked in, I just want to make sure that American workers are protected, I am skeptical. Because when we try to extend the most meager kinds of protections to immigrants in this country, the very same people oppose it on behalf of the bosses. It is unconscionable. And also, when I was talking to Dale Jackson about this on his program, kind of opaque about your intentions here. If you just said, well, they don't exactly have the authority to do this. It's not exactly, I don't necessarily disagree with the policy, but he just doesn't have the authority to do this. We need to pass it in the law. That's not what Steve Marshall said. In his press release about this, he said, quote, the Biden-Harris administration's failed attempts to force collective bargaining on Alabama farmers, not what it was doing, is yet another example of why Americans voted them out. Even on their way out the door, this administration continues to wreak havoc by extending the most basic level of protections to immigrants. Wreak havoc on American industry. We will keep fighting them until the moving vans arrive at the White House. They said that an 1819 News said that this regulation puts foreign farm hands above Alabama farmers. Putting foreign farm hands above Alabama farmers. And again, these are the people that are supposed to be fighting for you. How does it help you to exploit migrant workers in your country? Why would you not want a universal minimum standard of labor protections for all workers in this country? It's just so freaking gross. And that's why I have so little patience for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's something to me is I hear these politicians constantly talk about how much they love farmers. But I think, as this really points out, they love farm owners. Right. Not farm workers. Right? And I'm sure they want you to think about grandmama's little farm down in the county, but that's not who we're talking about here. We're talking about very big businesses, very wealthy interest, and it's a shame, because like you said, these are very minimal protections. This is not a rule that forced unionization on these farms. Would have been cool if it did. Yeah, I would have been okay with that because guess what? It would have actually uplifted everyone around them. Because I think workers deserve power and dignity.
Right. Yeah, it's just so frustrating. It's so gross. It is so unbelievable. But, that's where we are. So hopefully people start seeing through this.
Steve Marshall is, he's really putting out a lot about this, but I haven't heard him talking much about the child labor happening in Alabama.
No, actually, yeah. The child labor stuff happened, it's been over a year now, and he hasn't said a single thing about it. Not a single thing about it. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.